Okay, are you ready?
I put the Zoom up and running. Okay. It's not on. So you think we have to do the power? Yeah. It's the P6.
No, is it? I do it differently, but
Do you? She told us, I can only tell you
I
what
can
she
show
did.
you what I can show you what I do. Yeah, let me show you something.
All right.
You can press this button here.
Which one?
This one.
Yep. Okay.
And then you go down.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and the microphone is on. It's not muted, right? Yeah, we're in business. The microphone is working. If you want to even be a little more. And then
You have to turn it on. Yep.
This one as well, then the speaker can have a different mic.
Okay.
this is like
And his coffee is going to go. There we go. And nobody else is waiting to come in.
It's really the miracle of Chanukah. You guys are the miracle of Chanukah.
Right.
It's a dream come true. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. I'm really glad to see the brave ones who have come. I know it's been a very busy weekend here at Temple Sinai. There's so many things to choose from that you don't know where to begin, right? So I'd like to begin by saying that I'm standing up because sometimes it's easier for me to stand up. Maybe I'll sit down later, I'm not sure yet. If you want to stand up, you can also do that. Right? Stretch your legs and do some stretches.
Exercise too.
Yeah, well, yoga class is coming.
Okay.
Not yet. We're working on it. So I would like to begin by quoting Laura Chekhov, our board member, who met me this morning and said that she thinks that juxtaposing. I'm doing a little bit of a paraphrase, Laura. Correct me if you have to be re-quoted. Is that the juxtaposing of yesterday's event here at Temple Sinai, the interfaith Chanukah candlelighting, and the sad news from Australia that we were waking to this morning, shines in a tragic way.
It's off. No, it isn't. Oh, I did it off. It came on.
Mute everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know.
I think they're already doing it. They already did it,
Okay.
I think.
No.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good.
So I woke up this morning, like many of you, to see very disturbing news from Australia. They're the first to celebrate Hanukkah every year because it's just like they're the first to welcome the new year. And there was a massacre where at least 12 Jews were killed in a terrorist act in a Chabad open air Hanukkah celebration. Chabad organized. I'm assuming that there are many people there who were.
There were thousands there.
Yeah, and And it's just sad, it's just very sad that once again our holiday and our happiness and our celebration of Jewish people has to be met with hatred. And then what does one do in the light of such atrocities and such pain? And then, if I quote Laura, who said that last night we had the fortune of hosting here many of our own people, as well as dozens of representatives from different faith communities here in Rochester who together lit candles. We had representatives from Christian denominations, Unitarian denominations, Muslim denominations, Hindu denominations, etc. And we each lit a candle, and together we lit a menorah of peace, of inclusivity, of friendship, of neighborly relations. And this is my only answer, is that as people who, as someone, a person who's also experienced war and hatred in myself, and lived in a war-torn country, and you know, the answer is always to try to be the light and to bring hope and love and compassion where there's an antidote to hatred, right? There will always be, this is not something that will ever be resolved, right? And you know, it's never been resolved, it will never be resolved. There'll always be violence in humankind. And some of it is directed towards us, and sometimes we direct it towards others. You know, it's not clear cut. And what do? We are the ones who bear the hope, the light. You know, criminals, terrorists, aggressors have to be dealt with, but you know, our job is to bring the light, and to show that Chanukah can be a different story, and also that we will always reach out to our neighbors, to other communities that we share the space with, the common space with. And so yesterday, I think was a great step in Temple Sinai, demonstrating that we're not the only ones. Today, I'm invited to co-pray and lead the Sunday prayer at Asbury First. I've been asked to read some Psalms with them and share the priestly benediction. In a week from now, a group of us is invited to the same church, the Ascension, with Father Abby John, who we met last year for a similar. In other words, we're not the only ones doing it, but we were able also yesterday to be the ones inviting others to our place and share the light of Chanukah. And I think that resonated with our neighbors. And I'd like to share your hope, Laura, that those of them who were there last night, and if they opened the news and they saw it, maybe they also saw the news in a different light. So that's hopefully a good thing. Yeah. So one thing that I want to continue with, to say before and our talk about Chanukah is going to be along these lines. What is the narrative of Chanukah? Because the narrative of Chanukah can be described and told in more than one way, and that will be our conversation today. And I'll be happy. We'd love for this to become a conversation a little bit later on, so I can also hear what you know and what you think about this Jewish festival of lights. Before that, I'd like to say that this also concludes our first half of Whole of the Bagel, for this second year of Whole of the Bagel's existence. And I'm very happy and pleased that it kind of worked out for us. I think we've had a wonderful journey ever since we started in September, I think. We've had so many interesting speakers who came really from different denominations, from different facets of life. And I'm really proud of our community that we're able to be such a center of learning, of coming together. You know, there's a lot of other opportunities to learn here at Temple Sinai, and almost every day of the week, actually. But Whole of the Bagel remains the the cherry on top or whatever, the cream of the crop, the cream cheese on top of the bagel in terms of, I think of it really succeeding to become a relevant salon that people know about. I hear people who never come here. I know that people know that there's something going on at Sunday morning in Temple Sinai, and I think it's great, and it's happening because you guys show up and attend, right? And bring the bagels, and now there's even a group here that knows how to do the tech, which for me really is the coming true of the miracle of Hanukkah. That now who would have known that congregants can actually start the Zoom? It's kind of mind blowing, but it's happening, right? And it's a great culture. I think it represents something also, right? That we're not clients here; we are partners, right? We can all press a button, learn what the password is, etc., and even how to start the video of the TV. So, which is much like we do it at home, right? So,
Right.
yeah. So, yeah, Sheva.
I just want to say, I also want to acknowledge what happened at Brown University.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that escaped me. Can you
So many years ago, I don't know if you know, but my husband was a victim in a school shooting at Simon's Rock College on this day. And then many years after that, this is the day that Sandy Hook shooting happened.
Oh, my
But can,
So I just want to say, we're not normalizing this, even though it happens again and again.
Thank you.
but what happens? What happened in Brown University? I don't know.
Oh,
Oh, there was a mass shooting where someone opened fire yesterday.
Yesterday?
at least 2 dead and many injured.
And do we know the background for that? Or was it just
I
random?
don't know.
They have someone.
No, he said.
Oh, they got someone.
Got away.
No, there's.
Thank you. So sorry, I don't really always follow all the news. So yeah, so I was not aware. So I'm sorry. So thank you, Sheva. And yeah, like violence is violence, right? It's not more or less severe when it's directed towards particular groups. And I guess that kind of brings me to our topic, which is the miracle of Hanukkah. And the question is, what is the miracle of Hanukkah that we are celebrating? Right, so first of all, you probably knows this, that Hanukkah originally was not a major holiday, right? What's that?
Still not.
Right, it's kind of become, I think, even more than it is for 2 reasons. One is that in the Christendom, because people were celebrating, Christmas, then you wanted to give a Jewish answer to Christmas, right? So the gift, so all that culture, right? So Hanukkah in the winter, so Hanukkah kind of was made into a big thing to kind of give I don't want to say competition or counter, to be a friendly neighbor to Christmas. Okay, that's like a superficial level. And another thing is that in Israel, because Hanukkah has a narrative. One of the narratives of Hanukkah is the Maccabees who fought the many Greeks who really weren't Greeks, as you may know historically, right? So when many Jews came to Israel together as part of the Zionist endeavor to begin a Jewish state, we needed people to identify with, narratives to identify with, and all of a sudden these ancient Jewish soldiers, the Hashmonites, right, who their few fought the many, was something that could be told in a way that would inspire people to do the same in modern times. And so for example, when I lived in Tel Aviv, in the decade that we lived in Tel Aviv, we lived in a small street that was called Matityahu Kohen Gadol Street. It was Matityahu was the father, right, of the Maccabee, and it was and the big street that it would feed into, where all the buses would go through, was Rehov Yehuda HaMaccabi, right, and that was a really big street in Tel Aviv. So the Maccabees they give it street names named after them, and streets are named after them, and the whole idea of the first Hebrew city, right, is this Ephes of the Maccabees. So it's really interesting to perceive the kind of the politics and the history of holidays, and how Jewish holidays are interesting in the sense that the same act, the same ritual, can hold more than one narrative. And what I would like to suggest today, that the multiplicity of narratives that the Hanukkah hold is not an either or, but actually a complex kind of like tapestry of narratives that allows us to see our existence in more than one way and acknowledge the complexity of life, rather than just saying this one is a bad narrative, this one is a good narrative, this is a progressive narrative, this is a outdated narrative. I think we owe it to ourselves to show a more holistic approach. And it starts with the question of why is the story of Hanukkah not mentioned in the Bible? Does anyone know where it is mentioned? Where do we even know? What are the roots of the story of Hanukkah? When I, for example, when I want to learn about Passover, I can go to a number of places in the Torah, right? Those of us who are in Torah study, by the way, a little segue, Torah study group that meets here on Saturday mornings just had an amazing thing happen to us. We finished Leviticus. I think for the past 500 years or so, for sure since I've come here, we were in Leviticus, and I kind of thought it would be in Leviticus forever. I accepted it, I acknowledged it. I was like, okay, I'm a rabbi at Temple Sinai in Rochester, New York, and every Saturday morning we read Leviticus. That's like I breathe, I eat food. We study Leviticus, and all of a sudden, even though I try to prevent it, because we alternate. 1 week I come there to study with the group, and the other week Cantor Brown comes. And when I wasn't there, Cantor Brown and the group did a coup and read the last 10 verses, which I was planning would, until the renewal of my contract will still be Leviticus. But no, now we had to start the book of Numbers. It's exciting. It's mind blowing.
You did one line.
Yeah. And then like we stayed in the first verse of Numbers for a month now. We'll be
That was
talking
your
about-
fault.
No one said you have to do it in order.
Right. Well, I don't know. That group has their own rules. I don't tamper with those rules. I wouldn't suggest you do that. You try to do that, David. We will not see it kindly if we try to change the rules. At any rate, so this was just a little advertisement for the Saturday morning, in case you want to try. So
Wasn't a great ad.
yeah. So really. Well, but we're starting a new book now, the book of Numbers. It's a great book, by the way. You should read it. Yeah, so that's about Saturday morning. At any rate, so back to Hanukkah. So does anyone know why? So two questions. If I want to learn about Hanukkah, I will not find it in the Torah, such as which holidays will I find in the Torah? I will find Yom Kippur in the Torah. I'll find Rosh Hashanah in the Torah, even though it's not called Rosh Hashanah in the Torah, because back then it was just a Yom Teruah, and Rosh Hashanah was in the spring of the olden days. If I want to find Passover, Shavuot, I'll find in the Torah. If I want to find information about Purim, where will I find it? Will I find out about Purim in the Torah? So not in the Torah, but in the Bible, right? So there's a whole compartment of holidays that are in the Torah, and there's kind of like till today are major holidays such as Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, Shavuot, right? Then Purim is not in the Torah, but it's in the Bible. There's a whole book called Book of Esther that tells the story of Esther, right? And Haman, right? And so why is Hanukkah not mentioned in the Bible? There's no book of the Maccabees in the Bible.
It comes later in the Bible, the Torah ends and then. Hanukkah.
So that's a lot of times people think that Hanukkah came at a later time, but it's not entirely true.
No.
Because actually there is a book called the Book of Maccabees, and the Book of Maccabees has been written before the time when the Bible was edited. So the Bible has been edited about 2,000 years ago, roughly speaking. There were a group of people, and it was actually more than one group of people, and it was a process, and there was kind of like a conversation. There were many numerous books. In the end, only 24 of them, so the 5 books of Moses and 19 in additional, that made it to become part of what we know today, the Hebrew Bible, right? And in fact, the story of Hanukkah happened before that point in time. And there are many, many other books in the Jewish world back then, many more than 24. And you can imagine an imaginary table of editors, right? The convention of the rabbis and I don't know who would sat there in Jerusalem, and they had to decide what is canonized in the Bible. And they have the story of the Maccabees in front of them, and they decide that the book of Maccabees that tells the story of the Hashmonites and the war against Antiochus and those Greeks who really weren't Greeks, they were Hellenistic Syrians. And they vote Hanukkah out, not because, and what you said, Maxine, is commonly told story that it was just a later story.
It was for the Torah, it's not in the Torah for that reason, but it could be in the Bible.
It could have been in the Bible, correct. It could have been in the Bible, just like the book of Esther. But they decided not to include it. Anybody knows why? Or can guess why?
What were the events at that time that kind of made it not politically good to do it?
Right, yeah, exactly. There's some reasons for that. Yeah.
Weren't they becoming more Greek? They were giving up their Jewish ways in that time. In other words, they were just leaving Judaism and like here becoming American, you know.
Yeah, well, for sure they weren't becoming American.
No, I'm just saying like.
Because America came later, but so the ones who were, well, there are always those, and that's one of the questions. By the way, that's one of the questions of Hanukkah, of the Jewish people and the kind of like greater culture in which it's surrounded, right? But the people who are editing the Bible, they were not leaving Judaism.
No, but maybe they didn't want the
Yeah,
idea. Maybe
yes.
that because of that, they said, well, maybe we should put it in. I'm just guessing.
Right, I think you're getting close. Well, that question, however, the story of Hanukkah actually is not a story that tells to leave Judaism or to get assimilated. Actually, a story of victory of distinct Jewish identity that kind of withstands the threat of assimilation, right? So why wouldn't it's to me it sounds like a great candidate to actually be in the Bible.
Well,
right? So why did they decide not to put it in the Bible?
at the time of that editing, they were occupied by Rome.
Yeah.
So it would be like raising a red flag that we're gonna rebel.
Yes.
And so it was probably not a good idea to do
Yes.
that, wave that flag in front of the Romans. But I have a question. How do they know what the debates were? How do we know what the debates were?
So we don't, so, we're not sure, we don't know. There's academic research, and honestly, I did not read every article about that. I'm not an expert about exactly, and it's actually a fascinating question. And it's not like we know exactly who were the people, this was a process. The assumption that I have read about is very similar to what you said, is that at the time, the Jews were under the Roman Empire, a very fierce empire, and the powers that be that edited the Bible didn't want to augment exactly a story that kind of like encourages the Jews to rebel against a stronger power. That's Hellenistic. It's very close to the Romans. It's not. They're like, we better not include that in the Bible, so that not to give people the idea that this is something that we should do. And that is an interesting thing, because I'll get to you in a second, Paul. Those who wish to speak, is that it didn't help because people still told the story and celebrated Hanukkah, right? When sometimes you could try to be the editor that doesn't want to include books in some canon. Nowadays it's very hard because there's the internet, and it's very hard to be an editor nowadays. Right? There's other sophisticated ways to control narrative through social media, but it's not done in the old ways, right? And then, so people still celebrate in Hanukkah and told the story, even though the book was lost. The book of Maccabees was lost to the Jews. It was translated into Greek and then retranslated into Hebrew.
Oh.
So you can read the book of Maccabees, even though it's not in the Bible, it exists and you can read it. Okay, but it was lost and then it was refound. But people, even though they lost the book, they still told the story in fairy tale, and the story repeats the Talmud, and you can hear and you can read the story. And two, the Jews in the end did rebel against the Romans. It didn't help, you know. So there were two great rebellions against the Romans, which actually led to the destruction of the temple, and then to the great rebellion. The Romans, slaughtered 1.5 million Jews and sent many of them to the diaspora. So that kind of like precautionary measure to not include the book in the Bible did not in the end prevent that narrative from happening, right? But it was a nice attempt. Yes, Paul.
I had come across in a book by Burton Visotsky the hypothesis that we have 19 books in the Bible because it was competing with Homer, which also had 19 books, which was like the main narrative or Bible, if you will, of the Hellenists, Hellenistic culture. So we were competing with that.
So the Torah says 24, so it's 5 books of Moses and then an additional 19 because
19 books in the Hebrew Bible, and it was competing with the 19 books of Homer.
that is fascinating to me. I did not know that, and it only sheds a light on something that we're getting to, which is that the story of Hanukkah, which tries to portray the Hashmonites and the Maccabees as the ones who kind of like brought a pure anti-culture of Judaism, clean of Hellenism, is not exactly true either. Because in fact, what's that?
They were highwaymen.
What's that?
The Maccabees were highwaymen and were thieves.
Mhm.
And basically what happened is they killed off each other after the miracle of the oil. They practiced every type of side there was, fratricide, sons killing their father, brothers killing each other, and they became a new tyranny.
Who were also very heavily influenced by Hellenistic culture. Their names were Hellenistic, and they were not exactly purists of the Jewish tradition. So reality is more complicated. And what you're saying is that the Jews there were culturally heavily influenced by the Hellenistic and the Roman tradition, which is true. I was not aware of the 19 and the Homer's thing. It's interesting to me because the everyday Amidah, which we hardly ever pray here together because we're only almost pray here on Saturdays, has also 19 blessings. Even though it's called Shmona Esrei, which is 18, they added a blessing. So that number exists, and I never thought about it. Actually, till today, I never thought, why are there 19 books and 19, maybe it has to do with that. You never know. So, yes.
Go back to the original question, when it first appears. I happened to hear a podcast with Rachel Goldberg Pollen the other day. She indicated that the miracle of 8 days didn't appear until the Talmud. That may not have been, that was added.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm just speculating that perhaps the first mention that it is in the Talmud.
Yeah.
It's
true, correct. So actually yes. So about that miracle of 8 days, because again, if we're talking about what are the miracles? What is the miracle of Hanukkah? So option number one, which I was taught, in my Israeli Zionist upbringing, is that the victory of the few versus the many is the miracle. Basically, right? Is that God helped the few because they were righteous, right? And that the versus the stronger army that had elephants and had better weapons. Yet it's like a David and Goliath thing, but in this case we were David, right? And Yay, we won, right? That's a miracle. Then if you go to the top, that's what, if you read the book of Maccabees, which is, by the way, a fascinating book. I read it many parts of it many years ago. It really describes all the war and what happened, and it's fascinating. And and you can find it probably online and just take a look. It's available, right? I have copies in my office. I'm not sure in which line, in Hebrew for sure. I don't know if it's in English as well. Maybe Rabbi Till left some of it. I don't know. But then the Talmud, in fact, down for the same narrative that doesn't want to include the book of Maccabees in the Bible, and maybe that goes alongside what you heard, is that in the Talmud, there's actually no tractate about Hanukkah either. Sukkot has a tractate, Rosh Hashanah has a tractate, Purim has a tractate, okay? All the holidays have a tractate, except for guess which holiday? Hanukkah doesn't appear in the Bible, and Hanukkah doesn't appear in the Talmud. And again, the Talmud for sure is a later creation. And they could have been attracted about it, but they just a second decided not to. They do talk about it on the tractate of Shabbat. Because why? Because of candles, right? So just a second. So when the Talmud is very associative. So often, if they want to talk about something that doesn't really, they don't know where to put it, they'll put it. So through it, when they talk about, if I'm not mistaken, the conversation about the candles of Shabbat and how you light it, they say, oh, by the way, there's a whole other holiday, it's called Hanukkah, from which we learn the people who were celebrating, and they start to talk about the rules of how do you light the candles, and do you do first one and then eight, or first eight and then one, and all. So Talmudic, this rabbi says this is, but it's not, it doesn't get its own tractate. It's under Shabbat, and there and only there, you find a very short fairy tale. Like, how many of you have been in Tale of the Talmud this semester that we studied? A few of you, right? So you already have a little understanding. In the middle of the Talmudic debate, all of a sudden these short fairy tales pop up. Could be very random and wild, as you've seen, right? And then they say this fairy tale, yeah, about the little oil canister, whatever, that lasted for 8 years. They say that is the miracle of Hanukkah, because they want to downplay the military narrative of the miracle. See, in other words, putting it some kind of a miraculous oil thing that also has to do with the worship in the temple, so that we can tell a story that the miracle of Hanukkah was not the victory of the few versus the many, but more of a spiritual, religious miracle of an oil, whatever, kad katan, like an older pot of oil.
Is there something special about eight?
Oh, we're getting there. We're getting to the 8. There's a whole mystery to unravel. There's more than one answer to that. But you wanted to say something?
So when did Hanukkah become a holiday?
Yeah.
And what do we mean by holiday?
Yeah, great question, right? Because Jews have lots of holidays and they keep adding up. They keep piling up. And when I was a kid, because I grew up in Israel, every month there'd be at least one holiday. Try to have like a routine. Try to have a routine in Israel. Poor parents, they never know it. I can send you have the big summer vacation, July, August. Parents with young kids are going crazy because the kids are all over the place. And then, you go to school for a week and then it's like my holiday vacation, right? So, and then there's like, you're off school for a month, and this is crazy, like so many holidays, right? And and then the only month when we didn't have any holiday was Cheshvan, which is the next month after Tishrei. And then after Rabin was assassinated, they did the Rabin Day on Cheshvan, so even that month became, right? So did you have to assassinate him on the 1 month, right? Yeah, lots of holidays, right? So holidays commemorate. Holidays tell a story. Right? Holidays is something that we create, and in Judaism we have happy ones and sad ones. We have 7 fast days throughout the year, not just Yom Kippur. We have major ones like Yom Kippur. We have small ones like Tu B'Shvat, right? And there's like Exactly, the politics of holiday, what makes a holiday? And even more so, since there's a holiday, what is the story that we tell of the holiday? Sometimes that changes, such as we're discovering now in Hanukkah, that there could be more than one version. Like people want to do the holiday, but it's fun to light Chanukiot, menorahs, and it's fun to play with dreidels, and it's fun to sing songs and eat latkes, right? But then the story that we tell ourselves while we're doing it can be a few stories. That's what we're, see, that's, so you see it.
Hanukkah start, holiday.
So the Hashmonites, so you see, so the thing about Hanukkah, that since the victory of the Hashmonites, they did make a holiday to commemorate a historical thing that did happen, right? But then, does that holiday catch? The question is, you see, a lot of people, everybody can start, a lot of people can open a restaurant, but which restaurant will prevail and not go out of business after a year? And we'll become I don't know, an establishment like, I don't know, what's your favorite restaurant that's been here for 100 years? Whatever it is, right? So, see what I mean? So the question is, what the cultural impact, right? Some holidays, sometimes they rise and they fall, and their importance rises and falls depending on the winds of time and the politics of things, right? So Hanukkah, even though you see that, even though the establishment tried to sabotage it all the time, people still wanted to celebrate it, right? And it's look at it now. Here we are talking about it, right? And we're going to be celebrating it tonight, and everybody knows about Hanukkah. So according to the book of Maccabees, when they reopened the temple, and it doesn't say anything about the oil canister, but the problem is that year they could not celebrate Sukkot, which is a very important holiday, which lasts for how many days? Sukkot lasts? 8 days. So one kind of historical explanation that again, I can question that as well, is that they just re-celebrated Sukkot in the winter because they couldn't do it. So that, you know, there's the three important times of the year when you come to the temple is Sukkot, which is 7 days, but then the 8th day is Shmini Atzeret, that we call Simchat Torah today. And then there's Passover and Shavuot. It's the three regalim, the three holidays where everybody would come to the temple and assemble there. What's that? The pilgrimage, yeah. The pilgrimage holidays, and that year they had to skip the pilgrimage because of the war. Right, and then so they just re-celebrated Sukkot in the winter 3 months later, and that is the first Hanukkah. Right, again, that's another story. That's really true, but it kind of makes sense if you think about it in a historical way, right? Yeah, so that's one simple answer to why 8 days, right? So we have this holiday again that some people say is a military victory, and actually it was not just a military victory, it was actually the first time and almost the last time until modern day Israel that Jews had sovereignty in the land of Israel, because when they came back from the first diaspora, they were more autonomous and independent. They were under the Persian Empire, and Koresh, the Persian emperor, gave them permission to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild their little civilization there, but it was really part of the Persian Empire, and they weren't really independent. And then the Hashmonites actually succeeded to hold a Jewish kingdom. Yes, they were tyrants. They were not, they were not Switzerland, right? In terms of, they were not the perfect democracy. You could draw some parallels to today, if you wish. But yet, they did have a Jewish sovereignty there in Judea until the Romans took over a few hundred years, a couple of, so that was kind of a miracle of Jewish sovereignty that they were celebrating, and then so that's one story. Is that a miracle? And you can connect the dotted lines to today, if you wish, right? And then the kind of like halfway baked fairy tale of the oil that lasted for 8 days, and that kind of like is more of a religious, spiritual narrative, right? And then in that Shabbat tractate, there's another fairy tale that is told in the Talmud, which is actually, this is a third narrative that I'd like to suggest here, and then we can kind of like vote on which is our favorite narrative. Kind of like I don't know, snow fighting or whatever. Is that actually Hanukkah was first celebrated by Adam and Eve. Maybe I told you that last time. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So that actually what happened is that in the year number one, not to the common year number one. Which year are we now? By the way, does anyone remember? 5,786, because the world was created exactly 5,786 years ago. If you don't believe me, ask the dinosaurs. They'll tell you that's right. So the world has existed we're now in year 5,786. But go back to year one, to the creation of the world. Adam and Eve were just chased out of the Garden of Eden. And apparently, according to the story, they're not near the equator. There is some kind of temperate zone like we are, where the days in the winter get really, really short. And it's dark. And Adam and Eve, the only thing that they lack, except for clothing, proper clothing, is our experience. Because we know that every year there's a cycle, right? The days get shortened, but then it changes, right? It's actually, that's going to happen next week, right? It's called, what's the name of it? Solstice, right? Solstice is that it changes. But Adam and Eve do not know that. Why do they not know that? Because it's year one and it hasn't happened yet. The whole world is really new, and the whole thing is, so Adam and Eve are sitting there in their cave or whatever, after they were chased out of the Garden of Eden, the days are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and they're scared that the sun. They also don't know that the sun is a planet. They don't know that the sun is a star and you're a planet. They're not aware of all these things that we know. There's just this thing in the sky that lights and it disappears. And they're like, oh no, it's going to be dark forever. The light is withering. And so they light little candles in their cave. Every day they add a candle, to try to, and then after 8 days or so, right? There's a little ritual helps because they notice that the sun, right? The days are getting longer again, right? So that story is interesting to us, and that's also in the Talmud, but it wasn't told as much. Also a question, why wasn't it told as much, right? Is because if you tell a story about Adam and Eve, it makes the miracle about who? God, but what else? Adam and Eve are the parents of who? Which people? Which nation? Who are
All nations.
All nations. It makes the story universal. Right? So it basically makes that the narrative of the holidays. It's people, when they make a fairy tale, I don't know that people really went with, like Jamie Sartre now goes to make films about different communities, right? I don't know that people actually went to the cave of Adam and Eve with a camera and documented that, right? It's a fairy tale, it's a legend. When somebody makes a legend about Adam and Eve, they want to convey a message of universality, right? That the miracle that we're talking about is actually not just about the Jews, but it's about everybody, right? That's an important point. And it also makes it about light. It makes the holiday about hope, right? It's not about war. It's not about, oil that lasts for 8 days, which is also there. You can also tell that there's a lot of depth in that thing, but it actually wishes to tell a story of illumination, of light, of hope, right? The idea that people can be the light, right? And that when you spark a little light, then the universe responds, right? And that is, bless you. And right, and so basically these are the options that we have, right? And then to add to that, if you understand that possibly maybe this custom to light candles in the darkest time of the year, around solstice, right, is actually a very ancient holiday that predates the Hashmonite story. Because then if you look around and you see that this exists in many cultures.
Yes. The Christmas tree is all lights.
The Christmas tree, to me, is a celebration of lights. When I drive in the streets here, and it's like 3 p.m. and it's already dark. What do you guys, like, how do you, right? So you, it's like 2 p.m. and the sun is whatever. Are we like in Sweden? What is this thing? Right? So basically, well, we're like by the North Pole here or something. Yes. So basically, we drive around the neighborhoods, right, and in the snowy neighborhoods of Rochester, and you see those lights in the window, right? Basically, it's a similar thing. So you can say, well, Christians were influenced by this, like a version of Judaism or whatever, or a sister religion, but these customs exist in other cultures as well, right? It actually makes sense. Right, in the dark times of the winter, you would want to kind of like have a light festival, right? To tell a story of light and hope when things get dark, right? And we know that people in the winter months, they get more depressed, right? It's harder to deal with, I don't know, the shadows within when if there's darkness outside, and it's kind of like so then we understand that it's very possible that this fairy tale about Adam and Eve brings a memory that says actually this holiday, this custom was kind of almost hijacked or almost, it was retold as the story of the victory of the Hashmonites or this oil canister or whatever, but actually there was even predates Judaism, right? To a time that people would just celebrate the hope of humanity and light and hope, right? So this brings me to kind of like, and you can also draw all the parallels to today, right? Because these narratives, again, they're not mutually exclusive, right? They're kind of like our tradition lays them side by side by side, right? They tell you just a moment. They tell you these are the stories that we tell. There's a story of a war, of the few versus the many, of militaristic heroism inspired, I don't know, by God's providence, right? That allows the Jewish people to be independent, to hold their identity, their culture, right? In a hostile world, and look at that, and here we are, that's a miracle. Yeah? There's a kind of like a religious, spiritual, ritualistic miracle of the oil that lasted for 8 days, right? That tells a story of a spiritual miracle that happened to the Jews, right? And then there's the story, the universal story from Adam and Eve of light, right? That tells a narrative of a universal miracle of light and hope, right? And I think that if we think about our own identity today, right? What story are we telling? What is the miracle that we're praying for, or that we're celebrating? Is it Jewish sovereignty or Jewish survival, whether in the land of Israel or in our Jewish communities here? Is it more of a religious narrative of God intervening in the world, and you can add to that, by the way, if you want an ecological kind of spiritual ecological aspect of look at that little energy that can actually last more, right? As more sufficient or whatever. Or is it Adam and Eve kind of like universal identity of sharing the light of humanity, etc. Right? And now we can discuss it, Laura.
It just popped in my mind, the quote, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And an example of what you're saying of these many versions of one story that popped into my mind that made me giggle is Elton John's song Candle in the Wind, which seemed to be appropriate because we're talking about light, and how he has repurposed that song at least 4 times that I know of. When something has happened in society, he's like dedicated that song to at least 4 different scenarios. I think when who's the British Princess Diana died, he sang it to her, and then someone else died a few years later, and he sang it to them. So it's, I thought that was like a good, sort of parallel for what you're saying.
So same songs can be sung in different contexts and apparently different and it's just my halo over my head because we have to do something about the sun.
Actually, if you don't mind,
Just standing.
if you don't mind sitting down, one of the messages in chat was they can't see who's speaking.
Oh,
So
because
you
the
could be
camera.
there, you could be there
Oh.
late. So
I think let's just say Mount Sinai, a voice that speaks from behind the rock, right? All right, so yes.
There's another important Hanukkah that you haven't touched on. Post-Holocaust in New York City, I was born in 1946, and little Jewish boys and girls in New York City needed something to grab onto, especially at Christmas time, when we were going into Manhattan and seeing, all of the Christmas decorations, everything was Christmas, 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 in an area that had millions of Jews living with nothing of our own. Post-Holocaust and post the creation of Israel and what happened in that war. What Hanukkah gave us is some sort of pride in being Jewish. What it gave us is the ability to be within the community and partially celebrate Christmas because, many Jewish households still had a tree, which they called the Hanukkah bush, and we got presents and everything that went along with it, but we were Jews celebrating Hanukkah, not Christmas. And it gave us pride in the Maccabees, which was the military victory, so that we could look at our Christian friends and say, we too have a military past and we're strong also. So it was very important to a lot of young Jews in the New York metropolitan area in the 50s in making sure that we had our Jewish identity and we were as good as anybody else in this country. And the fact that it came out around Christmas was important to us because it gave us a holiday that we could have and celebrate at the same time Christmas was being celebrated.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I did touch a little bit about that in the beginning, that a lot of the narrative of Hanukkah kind of like became related to Christmas in the Christendom, or when Jews lived in the United States, but previously in European countries that were dominantly Christian, right? Because it kind of like the Jewish answer to Christmas. So Hanukkah becomes a greater thing. But thank you also, you kind of interweaved it together with both the importance of this kind of like ability to be a strong nation, one that can prevail, that it goes beyond just the people who live in Israel, right? Because when you're a Jew after the Holocaust, if you're a diaspora Jew, it feels very different if you're a nation that also somewhere in the world you have a homeland, whereas if you don't and you're persecuted, right? And again, going back to today's questions that we all struggle with, this kind of like this multi-narrative of Hanukkah, this story ain't over yet, right? And maybe I wish we could say it's behind us, but obviously the news this morning, etc. This complexity, this multiplicity of narratives and identities and the stories that are told over Hanukkah, how they're all interwoven, right? The universal one, the individualistic, national one, just a second, the one that people tell in the land of Israel, the one that the diaspora Jews tell, and how it's all interconnected. What is the miracle? What would like to be the miracle or the miracles that exist? Yeah, I want to speak here. Yeah.
I was going to say that in some ways the significance of Hanukkah has been enhanced by the fact that it occurs at Christmas time. I doubt it would get the full attention
Yes,
that it
absolutely.
currently gets if there wasn't at the time when the Christian world was celebrating their holiday.
Correct. So again, as to your question, Bruce, before, I'll let you speak in a second, is the politics of holidays and which one of them becomes central, or so again, we all understand, we all agree that from a halachic and religious Jewish point of view, Hanukkah is a minor holiday. It always existed, even when they tried to cancel it, they couldn't. or to downplay it, people still love to celebrate it, right? It's winter, it's cold, right? It would not have risen to the cultural greatness that it enjoys now in popular culture, Western culture, American culture, had it not been aligned, with Christmas. But then if you think about the ancient roots that predated Christmas and Hanukkah, like I was saying, that people just like to celebrate with light in the winter. You understand that it's not a coincidence. And in fact, it always has been there, but there were just different stories that were told by different people, and even by our own people, about the same holiday, which is essentially the same thing. Yes, and then yes, good.
So I always heard that Hanukkah was a minor holiday.
Yeah.
But at least in America, it seems like it's, beyond Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Passover, it seems like Hanukkah is a major holiday here. So how is Hanukkah celebrated in Israel?
So first I'll say again that one should know that there's a difference between what the establishment says is a major thing and what the people popular vote. Right? Like look at the Reformed Jewish congregation with Temple Sinai. The rabbi can say whatever he or she wants. The people could have a different opinion, right? It's okay, you said it, you're the rabbi. Okay, we're gonna do what you want, right? So or you could say it's a conversation, right? There's the rabbinic authority, and then the people's popular vote, right? Which is fine, because really we don't want the power to just be right in a place in one place, right? It's always a conversation. So for example, Kol Nidre, which is that ritual that everybody that starts a prayer Kol Nidre, that Canterbury sings and the cello plays and we get the Torah and that tefillah, that prayer that opens Yom Kippur, you should know that the rabbis were against it. And they try to cancel it because it's a version of witchcraft. It's like you cancel or you basically put on hold or cancel all your oath and everything that you pledged for. It's like a magical way to restart your soul, reset your computer, so to speak. And the rabbis were saying, what is that thing? Don't do it. But guess what? The people's popular vote, we love Kol Nidre, we're going to do it. So they kept it. With all due respect to them. See, so again, what is a major or minor holiday from a pure religious point of view? Hanukkah is a minor holiday. We know it because, for example, you can drive on Hanukkah, you can work on Hanukkah. Okay, you're not all those. It's just something that you do in the evening. Life doesn't stop, like Yom Kippur or Shabbat even. Okay, so from a pure religious point of view, it's not a major holiday. From a cultural point of view, it is. So we need to understand that these are two different.
Even in Israel.
Even in Israel, yes, because in Israel, so what happens in Israel? So the Orthodox Jews who live in Israel, like everybody else. Well, in Israel, it's a funny thing. The kids are on vacation in Hanukkah because teachers don't want to teach because they're paid very little anyway. It's a vacation for the kids, but not for the parents. So it's kind of like a half holiday. It's not exactly a right. So like that. It's people work, but Hanukkah is made it's in the public sphere. The Chabad would like, or the municipality would have a Chanukiah in the street. You can go to Hanukkah, like in some neighborhoods in Jerusalem, it's beautiful because they have many Chanukiot, and you can go to a tour and see all the Chanukiot in the windows, and it's beautiful. Or maybe you live in that neighborhood, so people celebrate it, and the kids sing Hanukkah songs. It's all about the Maccabees and their victory, and just something so you asked about Israel. The Hanukkah song that we sing here and the Hanukkah songs that are sung in Israel, completely different Hanukkah song. The only one that kind of overlapped is Yemeya Hanukkah, Hanukkah in English, which even not the same. The words don't reflect the translation. It's two different. Yeah, and then there's completely different songs, but still it's celebrated. It's a big deal in Israel, but it's not a major religious holiday. And it was also augmented because of Zionism, again, because of the need to tell a story of the victorious Jews by Yamim Hahem Bazman Hazeh, right? And so the ethos of the Maccabees. So the big the big, both soccer and basketball team of Tel Aviv, Maccabi Tel Aviv. Right, they play in the Euro League, they actually won it a few times, like the NBA of Europe. Maccabi Tel Aviv, yellow and blue. When I was a kid, that was a big deal. We cheered for them as they lost in Europe. But anyway, so there's a big deal because of the Zionist thing that's also been retold. Yeah.
Now, when is Hanukkah wine came up? This tradition.
So I'm not sure exactly. So I think it's kind of like probably a modern day like European thing. Maybe it has to do with the Christmas gifts, right? I think so. I think it has to do with this culture of gifts and giving gifts to the children around that time of year. As far as I know, it's not an ancient thing. It's really more of, again, it's a folklore. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised, Christian influence. Not necessarily that's a bad thing. Because, like, hey, they get gifts, we're gonna get gifts for 8 days, We're gonna have it even better. Like my grandfather, who's God willing will be 100 years old this April, who grew up in Brooklyn. They were very poor, so he would get a buttonhole for Hanukkah, like all of the Bagel. So that was their tradition. Maybe one day they got a penny, and the rest my great grandfather would give him a buttonhole for Hanukkah for the rest of the. Here's a buttonhole for you. All right. So yes, Esther.
I just wanted to talk about Hallmark cards. But I'll start with Debbie's sweatshirt.
Yes.
We have people, especially in the school today, they're all wearing ugly Hanukkah sweaters.
Oh, really?
Because that's now a thing. It was originally ugly Christmas sweaters as a cultural thing. Now that's not ugly, but it's, joke Hanukkah sweaters. The icing on the cake to me is I grew up, Hanukkah was transliterated Chanukah.
Yes.
Hanukkah. We found out here at Temple Sinai a few years ago that and we standardized the spelling to HANUKKH because all the decorations that you would buy, all the cards are now all with the HANUKK. So you have to go with the flow. The CH, has become extinct, and it's now the HAN because of American culture.
There's actually there's a cartoon called The Ghost and Molly McGee, and they have a Hanukkah episode, but they have a Hanukkah spelling bee where they list all of the ways you can spell Hanukkah.
Oh, I love it.
You should look that up.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and again, it's really fascinating. It's history in the making, right? We can see in our own times, right, how holidays shape and reshape, and sometimes it's a reaction to an internal thing that happens within your tradition, right? Events that happen, the resurrection of the state of Israel, I don't know, different things that happen to you as part of your own tradition. Sometimes it's reshaped because of external things that happen, like commercializing Christmas. Christmas also has evolved, who's Santa Claus? It's not where in the New Testament that it says that there's Santa Claus? Right? Where does it even say that there's a tree? Right? So I'm no expert and I can't really give a lecture, but maybe next year that could be a fascinating whole Bagel lecture, the history of Christmas and how it was Americanized and things that are completely folklore. Right, the Christmas tree is not a Christian per se symbol. It's more, that's just my understanding. And correct me if I'm wrong. A pagan, that again connects us to an ancient tradition of a tree of light. I can show you places in the Zohar when it talks about a tree of light that really resembles the Christmas tree as the tree of life or the tree of lights, of colorful, like fruits that are like colorful lights, and it's a vision in the book of Zohar. Actually, in the beginning to the Zohar's interpretation, exegesis on Exodus, and they talk about the Israelites who came to Egypt as lights who came into the diaspora, and they say it's like a tree of light, a tree of life. So if you want, I can show you the Hebrew Kabbalistic Christmas tree, right, or tree of life tree. So there's these narratives that they also cross culture. And we see here, like you were saying, Esther, how the Hanukkah is being Americanized, right? And then in the politics, they light the Christmas tree in the city square, and they also would light the menorah at City Hall and invite all the rabbis or whatever, and the Halo choir will sing again. But the Halo school, but just to say that yes, that you can see how even nowadays with the spelling, with the sweaters, how Hanukkah is being kind of like conventionalized in the greater story of America. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a symbol that, and it's fine. And just to say that even in the times of antiquity, the Jews who lived in the land of Israel were part of the greater Hellenistic culture. This whole story about the evil Hellenistics contaminating the temple. But if you go all around in different contexts, if you go where I used to live in the Galilee, there's hundreds of ancient synagogues that populated the Galilee in the first centuries of the Common Era. And they're all very beautiful, and they all had mosaics on the floor, and some of them are more well preserved than others. And they all had Hellenistic symbols inside the synagogue. Hades, the sun god, and his chariot are part of the mosaic of the ancient synagogue alongside Abraham and Isaac and the menorah. They didn't have a problem, just a second, 1,500 years ago in ancient Israel to put together Jewish symbols and Hellenistic symbols. The zodiac, different thing. You see, because they lived in the culture. They weren't closed. They were Jews who had a Jewish life, but was also very influenced by the culture in which they were surrounded. So it's not a new thing, and it's not a bad thing. It's just how it is.
Well, just look at the Hebrew and the Greek alphabets. They're very similar. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Alpha, Beta, Gamma. I mean, that's not coincidence.
Well, in this case, as far as I know, the alphabet is actually our invention.
Yes.
In other words, the alphabet started in the Middle East by the Hebrews and the Phoenicians, who were and then it was kind of imported to Greece, the Greek islands, and that became the Greek alphabet and the Latin alphabet. So in other words, that the coincidence there is that it was actually.
It's not a coincidence.
Yeah. Yes, there's a question by Joyce and Bob. What's the question?
Yes, actually, it's Joyce with, I received a message from an ally who said, please feel free to pass this on to anyone. This is a man who is a retired minister. May I read it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Hanukkah began in Sydney, Australia, with a mass shooting at a Jewish gathering at Bondi Beach. It is a tragically grim reminder that the forces of darkness are on the loose, not only in the U.S., but around the world. In the face of this, Hanukkah's message is more compelling than ever. As it is said, all the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light of a single candle. And as Peter, Paul, and Mary sang with such fervor and their universally inspiring Hanukkah song, don't let the light go out. It's lasted for so many years. Don't let the light go out. Let it shine through our love and our tears. So today I want to honor Hanukkah by honoring people like you who refuse to let the darkness extinguish your light and who light the candles on the menorah with this song in their hearts. And then it ends with, we've come this far, always believing that justice will somehow prevail. This is the burning, this is the promise, and this is why we will not fail. In love and light, Dave.
Thank you. This is great. And, so thank you, Joyce. I really appreciate it. I want to say, I'm going to let you speak in a second, Marsha, is that, actually this year in Temple Sinai, we're celebrating, as far as I know, there may be more, because there's lots of things going on in this temple that I don't even know about, which is great. It's not, a lot of people here have programs, but at least 3 programs that I know of Temple Sinai. We have, other than today's class, we have the interfaith event last night, which kind of was the universal light, and the Miracle shared society, coexistence, diversity, inclusivity. And we told that story. Bruce, like what is this? What is a story that we tell? It's up to us, right? So the fact that Temple Sinai, the Social Action Committee, and all of us who came yesterday to tell the story or retell the story of Hanukkah as this universal miracle, and invited all our neighbors to come, lit the Chanukiah at the window, not a physical window, but the cultural window. Look at us, we're all lighting the Hanukkah candles together, and clergy leaders, for faith leaders from different denominations, from Hindu to Muslim and Christian, lit the candle here together. That is a story. We choose how we tell us. See, we choose which narrative we tell. But tomorrow there's going to be an Israeli gathering here, because Sharon Shafrir organized, and I think there's more than 40 Israelis or ex-Israelis who are coming to celebrate Hanukkah at Temple Sinai. Also says Temple Sinai acknowledges Israel, but not in a kind of like a whatever divisive, abstract way of debate on CNN, but Israelis who live in Rochester, right? And they will be coming, or I should say, we will be coming. It depends. I'm like a they, but not sexually, like American and Israeli, right? So basically, we will be coming to celebrate. The Temple Sinai gives this group of people a home to celebrate Hanukkah in Hebrew with the Hebrew songs that we know from Israel, right? And we're having on the 19th in Shabbat, we have a Kabbalat Shabbat, tableside Shabbat to our own community with all the children. And in other words, we are telling these different narratives of Hanukkah, right? Here at the temple, and then on the Journeys of the Soul, on Wednesday night, we'll be telling something which I didn't talk about too much, is a kind of like the Kabbalistic understanding of the candle of the symbol for our soul and for God's light in the world, right? So we are actually succeeding to the community to tell not the story, but the stories of Hanukkah. Thank God it has 8 days. We can have, right? We could have a celebration each night that tells a nuance or an aspect of this holiday. There's more than one, and they're not mutually exclusive. They are all coming together to tell a story that's greater than just one of them. Yeah. So Marcia, and then
to add something lighter to the discussion here, I got a new phone yesterday and I forgot to turn the ringer off. So you probably heard my watch ringing. The phone rang and I grabbed my watch and that turned it off. But it was a friend who's not Jewish, whose Jewish grandchildren are staying with her, who is celebrating Hanukkah tonight with them. And her question was, besides latkes, what food should I get? And so I'm typing to her, and this AI on here starts giving me recipes for Hanukkah. And one of them was that I should get chocolate gelt. And so I wrote that to her, and then I thought, where does the concept of chocolate coins come into this whole thing? Is it like from the shtetl, a gift would be a coin? What?
Yeah.
Where did this whole thing come from with chocolate coins?
So again, I'm not sure. So speaking of AI, that would be a wonderful question to ask AI. You'll fabricate something. You'll give you an answer. It may or may not be true, but at least you'll have a that's a very good question.
Yes,
Right?
that's right.
I'm assuming that it has to do with Europe folklore.
Yeah.
We grew up with chocolate coins in Israel. It's cheaper than giving kids real coins.
Real coins, yes.
Right? It's sweet. It looks like Hanukkah gel, right? So I'm assuming it's an invention of the past 100 years or so, or 200 years. I don't know that they had chocolate at the time of the Maccabees in Israel. I think they did not. So I'm not sure about that.
I think it has an answer to it.
Oh yeah,
There's 3 Yiddish words that
Thank you.
we use at Hanukkah, celebratory, and they reflect exactly what Rabbi Zohar is talking about, the culture of Eastern Europe.
European.
In our those of us that came from there, our grandparents or great grandparents. So what are the 3 words that are Yiddish origin?
Geld.
Geld means money in German. It's Geld. The second word would be
Latkes.
Latkes, yeah.
Dreidel.
Which is, potato pancakes are all over
Yeah,
Europe. And their culture, so what's the third one?
dreidel?
Dreidel, dreidel means spin. So where does that come from?
Yeah. I don't
So-
think the Maccabees was spinning.
No.
They were spinning maybe weapons, but not, they were spinning elephants in the air with their spears. Just to say that, yeah, a lot of the roots of many of those customs that are Ashkenazi Jewish customs that then were adopted by many of the Sephardi, for example, the Sephardis and Sphinge, which is a sufganiyah that is smaller and in some ways tastier, I think. Now that I'm gluten free, I eat neither, but they were adopted later. A lot of the roots of those customs that we have now, you could take them to the Yiddish culture of, Eastern Europe or Germany, like the 19th century, the 18th century, maybe that's where you'd find them. I don't think they're much more ancient than that, although you never know.
So we're always adapting the holiday.
Oh, yeah.
to our
It
culture.
can't be. Potatoes and chocolate are from the new world.
Yes,
So
yes. So we know that it wasn't potato latkes at the time. You want to say something? Yeah.
I thought I read somewhere that the dreidel was used during, when the Greeks were occupying during the time of, or during that season where they would use the dreidel and they would pretend that they were gambling. And, but they were really using the dreidel to like study. So I'm not sure like how true that is.
Well, so truth and religion, So yes, I actually heard Cantor Braun repeat that story yesterday, and that's, I think, the first time I ever heard it. And now I hear it for the second time. So,
XXI had a special on Hanukkah this.
so I see. So as far as I know, this sounds to my critical ears as a story, not as a bad thing, but as a story that was trying to explain a custom that has arrived much later, right? And kind of like put it back in the time of the Greeks and the Maccabees. I don't know that it's historic for sure. For sure I can tell that I know that there's no historical evidence of that story. It sounds more like a story that someone told in recent years, or even 50 years ago, 100 years ago, to explain the dreidels and put it in the Maccabee Greek kind of element. Which is, again, it's fine. People will do that. People will creatively embed things, right? So we're kind of out of time. So maybe that'll be our last comment. Debbie and Laura, yeah.
So I just wanted to say that I think it was Tanisha. The children would go into their rooms and lock their doors, and the parents would have to pay geld for them to open the doors. And that's what
Never
geld
heard
came
that
from.
one.
Not chocolate, but geld.
Gelt, real gelt.
Well, there you go. So again, we have customs. We're not always sure how they started and how they became holy, right? For sure, there's no halakha. There's no Jewish law that commands you to either give geld or chocolate geld or spin the dreidel.
Yeah.
But again, the holidays are not necessarily about the religion. The folklore and the cultural aspect of the holiday is often much more important than the strict religious aspect in any culture, and in Judaism as well. All right, Debbie, you wanted to say something?
I just want to say that you can all be happy to know that it doesn't matter how you spell Hanukkah, Amazon will know what you're.
We're in America. We have to end in a commercial, capitalist, materialistic, consumerist aspect of everything, right? In the world. So thank you for participating. Call the Bagel is going on a break for about 3 weeks, or I don't know, when is that? Till January. So I hope you enjoy the space, and now that you don't have to come to Hold the Bagel every Sunday. You'll have lots of exciting things that you can do that are not Hold the Bagel. So I wish you a happy Hanukkah, and I wish you a good recess from Hold the Bagel. We shall reconvene in a few weeks' time for a very exciting.
Next week off, a couple weeks off. You can sleep in on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, it's just not needed. So
There's one more message from Deborah.
one more message from Deborah. Please geld derived from gambling to cover studies. So see that also, because you see also you'd think that someone would say that Jews would not just gamble, right? In other words, so this story, would say, Jews, and also maybe it's true, what do I know? Maybe it's true, but if you look with a critical eye, right, that they wanted to retrace it back to the Maccabees or to ancient times where Jews weren't allowed to study, as if Jewish kids all they want to do is study Torah and never gamble, right? So I would think that probably, Jewish kids had dreidels and they gambled with it because it was a fun thing to do, around the Hanukkah lights. And then someone came up with that other story, but that's how stories are evolved. And I mean, did the Exodus happen? You know what I mean? Stories are told, and the ones that resonate with the people are the ones that.
Well, I don't see any biblical thing.
It's a big thing, right?
But that's a vein.
No.
Honey, that's not the same. My eyes are very good. Bend down. I can't fight. I can't.
All right, so there's a fascinating program that starts here at 11 from the Adult Ed Committee, led by Stuart Loeb, who, as we know, is a great storyteller and a playwright. And he's going to tell us about the tales of Isaac Bashevis Singer that have to do with Hanukkah, or something similar to that. So I have to go teach Bogrim, the kids, so I can't stay, but enjoy that next program. There's homemade chocolate chip cookies, where? With Stuart? Okay, so we're bribing you with sugar. Chocolate chip cookies were used by kids who wanted to study Torah but didn't know where the Torah was. So they ate chocolate chip cookies instead. Not really. Not really.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Oh, maybe that's a thought. Maybe we can have a panel. So they're agriculturalists, they're astrological, astronomical, right, for holidays. And then there's often a carnival towards the end of winter, and Purim is part of that.
I'm gonna assume, so we should lag out of this. I'm gonna assume we should start. People are gonna be lagging out, just so it's not like a.
Yeah, then you can have two recordings.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I just wasn't sure. Do you know if the Stuart Lopes is in, will they be using the Zoom?
I asked Esther, she said no, because they would have
I'll
to
just
come.
log out of this.
I know, and I said.